So we're talking about insider trading, and I have a couple things to show you which I think is fun to talk about, and you probably won't get this anywhere else because it's kind of an odd topic, and you'll see why. So what is insider trading? Well, insider trading involves trading in a public company's stock or other securities by employees with non-public material information about the company. Insider trading can be either illegal or legal depending on when the insider makes the trade and the laws of the country the person is in. So it depends where you're at and depends when you do it. In the US, insider trading is illegal when material information is still non-public, and those committed face harsh consequences. So I think a lot of you probably already know what this is, but the basic idea is that in a public stock market, accounting books of companies are public. Information must be disclosed. That you're hiring someone, you're firing someone, these kind of things. Like everything's public. And so the idea is that you can then give people out in the public, investors like yourself, information, decide, do I want to buy a stake in said company or not. Now the reality though is obviously we're dealing with money, and anytime anyone has an inside scoop of a particular company, you can use it. so and it's very difficult to enforce these kind of laws. The reason why I mentioned this, and you'll be like, wait, what are we talking about here? Yes, we're talking about Warren Buffett. And I've always wondered about Warren Buffett, and I'm not accusing Warren Buffett or anything like this, because the reality is no one's going to accuse Warren Buffett of this, and no one's going to attack you and stuff like that. It's just not going to happen, because this kind of stuff is common on Wall Street, and it's hard to enforce because it would just be so much. But basically, here's the thing. So yesterday we actually made a video talking about this, and here's the headline: Taiwan Semiconductor, right? TSMC shares soar after Warren Buffett, who rarely invests in tech stock, buys $5 billion. So basically, what happens is that he can buy and sell stocks whenever he likes. Okay, this is for Berkshire Hathaway, and essentially for him and his team, they always want to keep purchases as secret as possible, because once word gets out that Warren Buffett is buying a company, everybody wants to buy that company, because Buffett will tend to buy and hold. He's a really long term, and he picks good solid stuff, so people just want to follow him. And so obviously you would want to buy Taiwan Semiconductor. Well, obviously, but many people would want to buy it after he gets in. And we had this discussion like, okay, so why is he buying Taiwan Semi? Why isn't he buying, for example, Intel? Why isn't he buying Nvidia? Why is he buying AMD? Just for example, because he usually doesn't invest in non-US companies. It's really quite interesting that he was going for this. And look at the headlines today, guys. Apple prepares to get made in US chips and pivot from Asia. So if you just read the headline, you're like, okay, so Apple's focusing their production from basically China over to the USA. We've been talking about this for a while on the channel. So I've been saying that probably the USA is going to pull operations from China and maybe look to India or Vietnam. However, it looks like also there may be government incentives coming in to encourage companies to have essentially build production facilities in the USA. Ironically, though, you may have Asian companies invest in the USA. So I'll give you an example. Hyundai or Kia, which these are Korean companies, they invest in plants and production of different facilities in USA. And it is a USA facility, but it is, the money's coming from Korea. That's that case. In this situation, you could say, okay, they are building a plant. In fact, it's Arizona, but the money's coming from Taiwan. So one of the things I always want to stress with you guys when we do talk about, companies, business, stuff like that, money is just flowing all around the world. So it's hard to really divide things of being foreign and domestic in today's world. And so it's funny how the headline kind of paints it like that Tim Cook and the team right over at Apple are doing a U.S. company. I mean, it is. It's a U.S. factory. It's U.S. jobs. Totally true. But, when you look more deeply into it, just take a look at this. Cook is literally referring to, or likely, because we don't know for sure, but Cook is likely referring to an Arizona factory that will be run by Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, Apple's exclusive chip manufacturing partner. That plan is slated for 2024 opening. And the reason why I think this is quite, and we'll read the rest here. And TSMC, that's Taiwan Semiconductor, is already eyeing a second U.S. facility, part of a broader push to increase chip production in the country. So it's actually really quite interesting because I guess Taiwan Semi is building two places in the USA. So yeah, I mean, the question is, did Warren Buffett know that Taiwan Semi was building these two things, and also that Apple is going to announce that they were going to use said factories? And like I said, I'm not accusing him. I'm just saying this is how you use information of the news. And this is why we look at the news all the time to try to figure out what's going on in the market. And so for people who knew that Taiwan, and I think some other people mentioned that before, that they did know that Taiwan Semi was building factories in the USA. I just didn't know. So if I would have known, yeah, absolutely, get Taiwan Semi. And as it turns out, Warren Buffett took advantage of that. And as it turned out, they have a deal with Apple. So let's read some more. This is Tim Cook on Taiwan Semis, or on the production facility. We've already made a decision to be buying out a plant in Arizona, and this plant in Arizona starts up in 2024. So we've got about 2 years ahead of us on that one, maybe a little less. And in Europe, this is Tim Cook more. I'm sure that we will also source from Europe as those plants become more apparent. And someone on the channel mentioned that that they had heard that Taiwan Semi is like building a plant in Germany or something like that. So, this is how the world works, guys. You get information. Now, what does it say about Intel? This is kind of interesting. Intel Corp is also building plants in Arizona that will be open as early as 2024, and also to understand how the world works. And I think you guys know this. Each U.S. state gives tax advantages to companies that come to their state. So, like, for example, we were in North Carolina, and like I think Apple's coming to town with like their second headquarters in North Carolina. So is I believe Meta, Facebook, and I think Google. And then in Ohio, I believe Intel is coming to town to Ohio. So for those of you guys in these states, you'll know when like suddenly all these tech companies show up because they're getting tax incentives. I mean, this is how the world works. This is why I like to talk to you guys with this stuff. And we'll say here they're talking about whether or not Intel would actually be working with Apple. Intel, the chip maker was a major Apple supplier for years, but is unlikely to recapture that business. This is just one person's opinion. Apple has swapped out Intel processors and Macs and other products in favor of its own components, and the chip maker has an unproven track record of manufacturing other companies' design. That's really quite interesting. And also, if you want to understand this, Apple actually, will farm out stuff to Samsung. I think it might be screens. I can't remember exactly all the parts that they use, but it always seems kind of funny that Samsung would make stuff for Apple, or LG would make stuff for Apple, et cetera, because you think they were competitors, but the idea is that these companies are interlocked, and so you can certainly have one branch of company work for another branch of company and still not compete. I know it sounds weird, but this is how the world works. Also, too, this was kind of a funny one. Back in May, Buffett disclosed that they started buying up Paramount. And I remember we talked about this one on the channel as well, because it seemed like, okay, it's not crazy, right? Go with media. It's got a decent valuation, etc. And the funny thing is, my wife, she always says maybe Buffett saw Top Gun before we all did. This is another kind of insider trading kind of thing. I'm not accusing Warren Buffett. I'm just saying it's kind of funny when you think about this stuff, because they delayed the release of the Top Gun movie, which was a fantastic movie, Top Gun Maverick, if you haven't seen it. And when they were buying stuff up, we saw Top Gun. And I'm like, my wife's name is Yee. I was like, oh my God, this Top Gun movie's great. I bet you Warren Buffett must have saw it. And also, too, if you guys saw this Star Trek Strange New World, which is also great. Because if you're going to have a streaming platform, you got to have great content. And so you got to know the product. And, evidently, Buffett is right. He knows that Star Trek is good and Top Gun is good. Therefore, Paramount will make money. Now, to be fair, talking about this, he bought Paramount in May in around the 30s. The stock is currently in the 20s. So he's probably down on Paramount, but the article said he bought a little bit, so he's probably averaging into a bit more. The stock's trading at a very low PE, 4.25, and a dividend of around 4.94. And I didn't check the bond yields today. I think they're probably still over 4%. So we'll see on that. But it's kind of interesting. Buffett's, if you guys are just curious, Buffett's best pick, and honestly, I wish I would have YOLO'd on this, but hindsight is 2020. We all know that. But Occidental was one that just been on fire for him. And the part of Buffett, though, and this is kind of the funny thing about how the market works, is part of it, yes, he's good at stocks. The second part is because he has a history of being good at stocks, everybody follows him. So whatever he's buying, everybody buys. It's kind of funny. So like whatever he picks, it's going to go up because like everybody buys it. That's just funny. And then also too, Taiwan Semi, as you can see here, he was probably buying, beginning of November, and hence the stock is, gone up. So that's the news on that. And I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this thing. And don't mess with the king of stocks, right? But it's just, I wouldn't be shocked if they had some sort of information, and it could be publicly available. So in that regard, it wouldn't be illegal by any stretch of imagination, because they're saying, you know what, we have public information that Taiwan Semi is building a plant. Okay, it looks like something interesting. The stock's going down. Maybe it's some, because you want to buy low, sell high, right? And then they, have some sort of, public article that Apple's like, oh, we're looking at, moving our production inside. And so, you can kind of connect the dots in terms of like if you didn't have any inside information. So that's sort of how this world works. I just like to share these things with you. So thanks again for watching, everyone. Love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll catch you in the next video.